I wanted to help you guys understand what goes on at the racetrack and maybe have a better understanding of what I do to help these horses as they move along in their career. You know, and if you understand what I do and why I do it, not whether it's wrong, right, or indifferent, but it dang sure is different. You know, we do things because it's the way the industry is geared. We do things because these horses are performance horses. Like we're shoeing them a certain way. And if I can help you understand that and where those horses come from and where they're going, you know, I think it helps us all. If I can help you understand with behavior problems, if I can help you understand, and it's not, you know, it's not necessarily behavior, it's quirks. You know, it's like that mare we were talking about. Some of these things are quirky. And if I can help you understand the quirks, then maybe it makes your job easier, you know. And hopefully here today that, you know, I can bring something to the table. And it's kind of weird, you know, race player, AFA, that's a little weird, you know. And then I look down the lectures there, like Paige Boss, she's a bear player. Somebody can fire. So anyway, you know, that's kind of what the talk's going to be on. And if you guys have any questions, I'm very open. And I'm probably not going to stay. I may be all over the place here. But if there's any questions, this is a discussion between us all. Now, if I can get this to work.
That was it.
That was it. Good job, guys. Let's see if we can get the manual working. There we go. Well, we got that already. I was already supposed to go there. You know, is it? It's me. That's not the way a horseshoer does anything. Yeah, you just keep banging on it. Anyway, you know, I have been shoeing racehorses for 27 years. Started out underneath my father. I did an extensive apprenticeship under him. I worked closely with him and a few other guys for around 5 years. You know, and I worked closely with my father for about 2 years after that. We traded some outfits back and forth, and you know, that's kind of the way that I got started. For the first 17 years of my career, I never put a steel shoe on a horse. Everything I did was done in fours and done in aluminum. You know, and it's kind of funny because now that we went further along in this, you know, I started doing some other horses. You know, but for my book, for the last 20 years, I've had, which I think is pretty remarkable for any horseshoer. I got to looking back, and I didn't realize it. We were kind of going over some numbers and some books and some people that I work for, and I've got 195 head of horses on my books that I have worked for since the time I was 21 years or younger. You know, that's pretty. You know, and everybody talks about the racetrack. They change, they do this, they do that. I've got some pretty loyal customers, but I've been loyal to them too. You know, I've went a lot of places for them, done a lot of things for them, but they paid my bills my whole life. You know, so, and that's where I started for the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, got married, had kids, and then I started building an off-the-track business. Built a small off-the-track business. My business is still based probably 85% on the track, and then 15% off the track. And that was the funny thing to me, and it kind of came to light. You know, that all these racetrack blacksmiths, you know, they were doing this and they were doing that, and then I started having to shoe some of the horses that were coming off the racetrack. The bad part is I was having to shoe them by myself. You know, I was shoeing for owners that ended up keeping horses. And there was a transition period there that got a little, you know, I was trying to figure it out. So that's where we're going. I think I may have helped figure out some things. You know, we're going to talk about that, you know. So I went through, I got to change this thing again. Somebody just needs to work this for me. All right, I hit it. Okay. The history of the racetrack blacksmith, you know. These guys in the 20s, 30s, 40s, they were spanky. I mean, they were spanky. It was the place that everybody wanted to be. The test was in, you know. the test was tough. You know, you had to make 2 swedge bar shoes in a time period, 2 different bar shoes. You had to make heart bar, V bar, straight bar, whatever you wanted. You could pick 2 bar shoes in a time period, and they had to fit the same pattern. You know, that's a pretty spanky test. You know, and then brace and toe grab in. You had to be ready to go on. You know, and then you had to make a block and sticker Heim, and a block and sticker Heim was to a size of whoever the tester's was choice. You know, you want to make it. Yep. Yep. And then, so you know, those guys were like really, really spanky, and you had to shoe a horse in front of a board, and they could ask you questions. They could do anything. They could stop you in the middle of it and tell you they wanted you to do something else. You know, they didn't do it a ton, but if you come in there and you were being cocky, and you know, they would stop you in the middle of it. You know, so that's kind of where, you know, the testing now and currently there's pretty much nothing. You know, California has some things. You know, they're trying to put the test back into Pennsylvania, but it's falling apart. You know, the test now literally. I called a guy. I was going to have to go to Pennsylvania and shoot some horses, and I called him about taking the test there. And he told me, he says, Pat, if you can glue a piece of aluminum on a shoe, you can probably pass the test. You know, what is that? You know, I mean, come on, give me something. You know, and he laughed too, but he said, you know, that's basically what it is. They're kind of trying to just let this go. And I've seen a resurgence of guys wanting to learn. It's really funny. I was down in New Orleans 2 weeks ago, and I had 5 guys there that were under the age of 27 probably, and they were there to work all week. And we swedged out bar shoes, you know, and I would go by because I need help, you know. I'd go by and grab one of them, put them in the truck, and leave the other 4 there working. And it was really cool for me because I started realizing maybe that it's not all dead, you know. And those guys worked their tail off in there. And at the end of the week, they were there for 6 days. And at the end of the week, they came out of there and they could make some pretty spanky stuff, which was cool. And they all went home and they've been sending me pictures of practicing and doing things. You know, and then they got to work with me throughout the week on horses, and we approached problems and they got to see problems. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it kind of put me back in the bed a little bit. You know, it made me. I'm proud of it. You know, I'm proud of the kids. I'm proud of them working and trying to do something to further their education. And that's where the racetrack test has went to. It's went to pot. You know, so I see a lot of these people reaching out to get their certification, which I think is cool because they want to do something. They want to. I did it myself last year. I started through my certification process. You know, I'm a guy that's been shoeing for 26 years last year. And I took my certified last year. And I'm pretty proud of that. Not because, did I need it? No. I just wanted to say that I could do it. And I kind of wanted to, you know, there were some people that were asking if they could do it, you know, and kind of help them along the way. But I did it differently. I nailed on a heavy training plate. And I did it off a stall jack. And I did it with a pair of shorts. You know, because that's who I am. My shoe board had race plates on it. You know, which I thought was pretty cool. You know, and a lot of the testers did too. You know, when I come in there, they said, you know what, you didn't change who you were. You just took our box and put your stuff in it. And I think that meant a lot to certain people. You know, and I know it meant a lot to myself. You know, and you know, going on from that, I know that race platers are the black sheep of the family. You know, it's just the way it is. We get looked down upon because a lot of things, as we go through this, I think you're going to understand why we do things. You know, but that's for the last, probably since the mid-'60s. You know, the name started declining. You know, but there's guys out there that are doing good work. You know.
Did the owners change much too during that time?
You know, it's become more of a business type. It's always been a business, you know, but it's become more of a business driven, I think, more here lately.
Yeah. Less horsemanship.
Well, there's less families in it. You know, it used to be there was a lineage of families that were in the business. You know, Calumet, everybody took it over. You know, some of the sons would take over. And you see a lot on the racetrack too as far as race players. You know, my father was a race player. You know, you see a lot of guys that kind of are just born and bred into it. You know, and there's stereotypes of race players. You know, all of them are bad. You know. I tell you what, there's a lot of guys out there that are doing really, really spanky work, but you don't hear from them. You don't see them. They're in their own world, doing their own thing. You know, their horses are sound. They've got good feet. You know, it's funny. I've had a couple of people come ride with me, and not a couple. I've had a lot of people come ride with me. You know, my truck's always open, and I feel like I've tried to pay that forward. I was able to get in a lot of people's truck. Nobody ever really told me no. So, you know, I try to do the same thing. But you know, you get to those guys, they come and they ride with me, and they're looking, and you can see them walking through the barn, they're looking at the feet, and you know, they're walking through other shed rows, and they're looking at the feet. You know, by the end of the week, they're usually, this is not what I thought it was. You know, every one of them, I haven't had one yet that tells me they're not surprised because of the stereotypes. You know, and like with all the racetrack horse stewards being bad as a whole, you know, nobody talks about the good ones. You know, think about that, even off the track stuff. Everybody always talks about what somebody's doing wrong. You know, and I will say in the last couple of years I've seen that change too. You know, it seems like we're starting to promote each other better, and we're starting to pat each other on the back and say, hey man, that was a good job. Like, that was solid, you know. And I think that's important. You know, it's, you know, I've been beat up a lot in my life. Everybody's told me when I've done stuff bad. You know, very rarely do they tell you when you do things good. You know, and I asked my father that one time. I said, you know, do I ever do anything good? And he says, if you do something good, you already know it. You know, why should I tell you the good things? You know, so I've seen that change in the industry, which I think is cool. And I think race players are starting to, you know, talk about each other and say, hey man, you're doing a good job there. You know, what can I do? And it seems like it's starting out small inside the industry, you know. And I'm hoping it grows. You know. Shod short. That's a big one there. I mean, everybody, you know, we're shoeing horses too short. You know. I think about that a couple of different ways. You know, you put up a 100 fit, everybody talks about how super cool it is. You know, I think a racetrack fit is actually bigger than a 100 fit, or at least mine are. You know, but we're setting these horses up to get them shod in 4 weeks. We're not setting them up for 6 weeks. Like, it's not. That's not what we do. You know, they're set up. I shoot a lot of my horses on 28 days. You know, and so you don't get that foot everywhere. And what happens whenever you get a problem off the track too? You know, if you back that schedule up, you know, your feet stay together. They'll come together on you. So we're doing a lot of that on, you know, 28 days. And these are performance horses. You know, they are asked to do a lot. There's a lot of pressure there. They want their shoes on at the end of that race. You know, and it's funny, when I watch a race, I'll watch a replay, and I'll kind of look down, and my wife's watch a lot of them. You know, and the thing I do is I'll look up for the gallop out, because I just want to make sure they got the shoes on. You know, and you know, along with that is these things are dead tired at the end of the race. You know, that last 16, they're dead tired. They're running on heart, you know, and we're asking them for more. And there's a little guy on top of them that weighs 110 pounds, says they're not done yet, you know, and their legs are getting wobbly. Do you want a bunch of stuff hanging out there? You know, there's enough to support them. We're working on them on 4 weeks. You know, do you want it all hanging out there? The other thing is, you know, if you get it all hanging out there, their legs are wobbly, they're tired. If they grab a shoe, you know, and if they grab it, and that sucker goes down and he's in front, you've taken that jock's life in your hands. You know, that's not okay with me. Because we're still holding our horses' feet together, we're not sacrificing them because we've got them set up on a short schedule. You know, long toe, long heel, or low heeled, long toed. You know, that's what you hear about the racetrack. Thoroughbred is They're low-heeled horses. And there's nothing that you're going to do to stand them up and make them be any different. They're low-heeled horses. What we're looking for is a solid heel. You know, we're not looking for a crushed heel. We're not looking for a high heel. We're looking for something. We're using sound shoeing principles. You know, but you also got to think, most racehorses have a 16 to 24 month career. Like, that's it. You know, and if these heels start getting a little bit low on us and they start doing things with us, you know, it is. Are you going to lay them off for 6 months? Now you're taking 6 months out of that horse's career and bring them back. And who knows if they're going to come back. We've sent a lot of them to the farm, and we do it. I'm lucky. I do work for some clients that give horses layoffs when they need them. But I can see why it doesn't happen. I've pushed for races before. You know, we've got a regiment of races. We got 3 races left in that horse's career. You know, and they've been pounded. You know, we train them every morning. We ask them to go at speeds that they're probably don't want to. You know, and we train them and we work them through things. You know, it's like an athlete. If you're in the NFL and you're a little bit sore, but it's game Sunday, you're playing. You know, so that's where, like, a lot of these horses, we work through things. It's not that we pound them. I don't work for one trainer that will send a horse over there knowing that something's going to go wrong. It happens. You know, it does happen. But I do not work for one person, and I work for some outfits that are top level, been very lucky with, and I work for some guys that run some strictly claiming horse outfits. And the funny thing is about those strictly claiming horse outfits, the one that I work for that turns a lot of numbers, he knows where every horse he's ever had is to today. Every single one of them, he knows where they're at. He'll make sure they get homes. You know, like he'll look at these horses. He loves these horses. You know, he feeds them all peppermints every day. You know, he feeds them anything they need. He takes care of those horses like they're a good outfit. It's his way he makes a living. But I find it crazy because I'll ask him about a horse, you know, and he'll tell me where he's at. He'll tell me where he's retired. I've had him have a horse stand in his barn for 6 months because he couldn't find a home for it. And he was paying the bill on it. You know, that's pretty cool. And, you know, now did he go to an 8-week shoeing schedule? Yeah. Did he come off all the high-powered feed? Yeah, he did. But, you know, as a stereotype, we get, you know, the racetrack as an industry gets thrown into, they're just pounding them. They're just pounding them. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen on certain levels. You know. But for the most part, I believe that, you know, they care about their horses. You know. Thin walls. That's just what they are. You know, they're just thin-walled horses. And I say that, but if you look at the shoes that we have set up, they're punched to be thin-walled horses. You know, if we're going to drive them in the white line, the shoes are punched thin. There's not much we can do about that. You know, it is what it is. They don't have any pitch. You know, they're all made to be driven straight. You know, and like low nails. Everybody says low nails. It's a 3.5 race nail. You know, by the time you put it through a shoe, the shoes that I use right now are about 3/8 inch thick. You know, they've got more depth in them. By the time you drive it through and you run it up, and you can run it up to the peak of it and clench it, it's about 3/4 of an inch up there. It's all you got. You know, I've heard a lot of people say, well, you know, low nails, low nails, low nails. Man, it's like having 6 horses in a 2-horse trailer. You're only going to do so much with it. Like you just can't. You know. Is there any questions up to this point? Heck, I must be doing good.
Have changes in the racing surfaces all the shooting styles?
They do. They do. California tends to have harder tracks. And I know when I send horses out here, I send them out on a lot of times 2 or 3 weeks worth of growth. Just because of that, and I've talked to guys that shoe in California, and they check on them if they need to be, you know, shod. They'll shoe them and take care of them. It's funny. It's kind of a close-knit community. You know, I can send a horse pretty much anywhere in the country, and I know who's going to work on that horse if it needs to be done. And those people will shoot me straight too. You know, like I sent a horse out to California, and the guy goes and looks at it, and the horse was on 31 days, and she was running the 400,000. And I sent money out, cash money out, for him to shoe the horse out of my own pocket, because I didn't want him getting the runaround, and I knew the owner or the trainer was good for it, you know. And he calls me, he said, "Pat, she's good," you know. And how many horseshoers, you know, if the horse would have been due, and cash money are sitting there waiting on you, you know. And most of the time they're probably going to get shot, you know. But it's funny because it's, you know, I know 2 or 3 people that have ever racetrack. And I work on some horses by nature that ship a lot, and they go a lot of places, you know. So it's the grooms and the hot workers, they know who to get when they get there, you know.
So what about the stylish?
I'm sorry, that's where we were going. I'll get off everywhere. You know, with the synthetic surfaces, we've had to start doing some things. You know, we've had to start shoeing horses really flat, you know, taking all the traction off of them. In California, you know, they tend to try to leave a little more depth on the horse's foot because it's, you know, it's a harder surface. You know, I'm in the Midwest. We're pretty lucky. And a lot of the guys that go with me, it's funny, Jason Usher was in the truck with me, and first horse he watched me shoot. You know, and I pulled it out, and he's used to leaving a lot of depth on the horses, and we just don't, you know. And I heard him the first nipper run I made him. I said, "What's the matter, man?" He said, I didn't know you were going to take that much. You know, but the feet look good.
You're not burning.
No, we're not burning, you know. And we're trying to keep all the leverage off the leg, you know, and that's where it goes back to long toe. You know, we're trying to get it off there. Just sometimes when they've got the heels beat down, you know, there's not a lot we can do. And there's only so much we can do, too. You know, if you go to hanging, you know, a lot of trainers don't want to run in bars. You know, a lot of trainers, you get outside the norm and they start, you know, I've been pretty lucky. If my horses go in bars, they run it, you know. And I don't run an aluminum bar. Every bar that I put on in my career, with the exception of one, was a steel bar. And it was a custom-made steel bar. Old school, that's the way my father was. I could only clinch and pull shoes for him until I could learn how to make a bar. You know? And so I was kind of brought up that way. I'm not saying it's wrong. I know a lot of guys that put aluminum bars on horses that have great success with them. I was just brought up where I feel like a horse needs a bar, it needs a steel, you know. And the one aluminum that I did put on, man, I just kind of felt dirty when it was all done. And it was, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there's not. It's just different than what I do. You know, now up in New York, you know, they've gotten to where they you know, they shoe a little smaller than what I think. It's normal up there, you know, and those trainers up there are a little bit different. Man, if you do lose a shoe in a race, you know, I'm pretty lucky. We get by. We don't lose a lot of shoes. We get by. But like the guys up in New York, if you lose a shoe up there, they're probably looking for somebody else. It is. You're replaced. You know, and that's pressure. You know, that's a lot of pressure on those guys. So they shoe accordion. They have a family fee. You know. So, anything else? Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Did that go? Okay.
It's just, it's gotten away. I'm in the Seattle area now, and it's just gotten away from the racehorses, and I just didn't know that they could change and altering the type of shoes they're using on these synthetic surfaces.
You know, and it's funny, I've seen a change in race plates itself. You know, I've got about 70 to 75% of my horses that I shoe right now that are flat all the way around. You know, I'm talking about, I've got some pretty decent horses. They're just flat all the way around. And one of the things that, it's not on the topic, but I'll go into it. I started noticing a couple of years ago, right in the center of my toe, that I was starting to get on those horses that had toe grabs on. I was starting to get a bruising right in the center of the toe. You know, and I was thinking it was because of that toe slapping the ground, because it was longer. So I started pulling it off, and after doing some research and different things, that it was like a polytrack effect. It was stopping the foot too bad, or too fast. You know, and it was causing a concussion effect in the foot. And so when I started pulling it off, my hop problems also started going away. you know, and it was a great thing, but I was doing it for the wrong reason, but it ended up being the right reason. You know, so I started transitioning a lot of horses into Queen's plates. And I think that's kind of across the board in the Midwest right now. California, you know, they're still using low toes on the front of some horses. You know, yes, sir.
How did you discover that it was stopping the foot too fast? What methods?
High speed video.
High speed.
Yep, yeah, high speed video. Mitch Taylor's got some really good high speed videos, and that was pretty cool. You know, and you think about it, on the poly track, nobody wants on you know, or a show ring that's a poly surface too. You know, everybody tries to get into the slide. You know, well, we started making synergy shoes for that because we didn't want the, you know, we wanted them to slide. We wanted them to slide as much as possible. Well, we took them off that and started running them on dirt surface, put a toe grab on it, and in effect, we were doing exactly the same thing, but it was tradition, so nobody wanted to change. You know, and now they've started realizing that it's better. You know, and I've seen my horses stay sounder, and I've seen my horses stay sound for, you know, a longer period of time. And we have, you know, a couple outfits that I kind of had to talk into it and promise them all kind of stuff and rainbows and everything else. But what I started out was the 2-year-olds that come in. We would just put them in Queen's plates all the way around, and we would just leave them in as they went through their career, instead of taking the horses out of them because they felt like, you know, mentally, if they lost a race because they didn't have toe grabs on, you know, well, if this horse has never had toe grabs on, I don't know, it was a pacifier for them, I guess. You know. But it worked out, you know, and it's worked out well, and I don't see my numbers any difference as far as horses winning and horses losing.
The digital cushion, lots of talk about it collapsing and being bad, generating it of different sorts.
Can you regenerate it?
Yeah, there's lots of talk about it. So you start out with these horses. How do you see that develop, or do you see? Are you at a spot where you pay attention to that, or?
You know, I think a lot of that probably happens later in life. Do we see some of it? Yes, we do. As a whole, I don't think I see it a lot.
I kind of think it goes over they're made that way.
Yeah, yeah, they're made that way, and I think a lot of it is too. Everybody starts trying to get the heels up, and then instead of just leaving them in a solid heel. And I feel like over a period of time, you know, that's going to contribute to it. But you know, and a lot of these horses are, you know, they're 2 to 5 years old. You get a horse in the barn that's 5, you know, and I kind of work I work for outfits most of the time when they get to where they're 5, they're brood mares. They're moving on to their next career, you know, and they're not going to take a chance of, you know, hurting a horse at that point because they do have another career, you know. Most of the time it's making babies. Somebody have a question back there? Numbers versus quality. Is that where we're at? Yeah. You know, everybody sees race players ripping through numbers. You know, you're just doing a ton of numbers. You're just ripping through numbers. Anytime most race players right now, they're doing over 7 or 8 on a consistent basis, they have help. You know, and we're set up to do things a little bit different. Your average farrier on the racetrack, I'm going to say, is going to shoe a horse somewhere between 25 and 35 minutes. And I know that's mind-blowing to a lot, but you can understand it. You know, everything's done cold. It's done underneath the horse. You know, and so, and I've got my help set up, and they're trained the way that I want them. When they're underneath the horse and they start pulling off shoes, they will tell me. They will point. We've got, you know, things that indicate if something's wrong or I need to look at it, or they'll hand me a shoe a certain way because of the wear. You know, they'll have their finger on the spot, you know, because it's kind of communicating without letting anybody know that there's something we're addressing. Because if it's not big enough to call to somebody's attention, we're just going to address it ourselves, you know. And when I get underneath the horse, I never take my eyes off the foot. My help's handing me everything I need. You know, so my eyes never, so my thinking time is done with me looking at the foot. You know, so every tool, you know, my eyes never come off of it until that foot's shot and it's dropped. You know, so that sets it up. If you're thinking, you know, your average work day is, you know, 8, 9 hours long off the track, 10 hours long till midnight. Dog bites you when you get home because he doesn't recognize you've been gone so much. You know, But that is, all of our barns are also set up, it's like working a showground, you know. You get there and I set my appointments up on 30 minutes. That's with drive time, that's with everything. I set my appointments up on 30 minutes. You know, but you're talking about drive time, you're talking about from that wall to that wall. You know, I mean, you're basically in the same barn. And my help knows they grab the stuff when they get out of the truck, they go get underneath the horse. Most of the people that I work for know that they respect my time and I respect their time. You know, if I'm going to be late, I shoot them a text. If I'm going to be early, I shoot them a text. And for the most part, they're, in quarter cracks. Everybody wants to talk about quarter cracks and problems. You know, and the reason I think that is it's mainstream media. You know, you only see it when you're pushing for the big races. You know, and they think, well, you know, horse and derby's got a quarter crack. 1 out of every 20 got a quarter crack. No, they don't. You know, I've worked on a lot over my career. I don't work on that many anymore. But it is a necessary evil. You know, and I've heard people say that, well, for a guy to get good at working on quarter cracks, he's got to have a lot of them. No, you gotta. Most of the time we get in trouble with somebody, we learn how to fix them because it's a money-driven business. That horse has got to run tomorrow. You know, he's got to run next week. If we can do it and do it safely, without hurting anybody, without hurting the horse, if we can do it, we can hold him together. Yeah, we're gonna make that race. You know, so it's you know, I think as far as that's a big misconception that there's a ton of quarter cracks on the racetrack. And I think it also goes through track surfaces. You know, we went through a period down in New Orleans, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, the track just went, it was 2 different surfaces on the front side and back side. You know, it was after Katrina happened, they were trying to resurface it, they bought in new dirt, they did a lot of things, and they changed it. It was completely different, you know. And we were sitting in the shop, and a lot of blacksmiths that I respect, we were sitting around there talking, and between 4 of us, we had 37 quarter cracks. And guys that had went years and never had one. You know, so there's a lot that plays into it. And also, if you've got a horse that's coming up on a race, and you know, it was funny, I was doing a clinic down in Texas in October, and there was a guy there, and he was talking about, he's not on the racetrack, and he was talking about Big Brown, you know. And he says, well, if they just would have gave him time off before the Belmont, you know, the quarter crack would have grew out and he'd have been good. They'd already won the Derby. He'd already won the Preakness. He'd already won the Florida Derby in it all. And at that time, there was like a $6 million bounty on the Belmont. You think he wasn't going? You know, I mean, it's like the NFR. You know, if you're shoeing a horse that makes the NFR, if you're shoeing a horse that makes Rolex, if you're shoeing a horse that makes whatever, that's a big event, you're going to try to get there. Because how many times are you really going to be able to get there? You know, there's one Derby, that's it. That's it. They're 3 years old. There's one. You know, in a lot of races, there's one. So do we push for it? A lot of times we do. You know, but those quality of horses, a lot of times they're going to push for it if it's safe. You know, because there's more money to make down the road. You know. Any questions on that topic?
I don't know if it's the right topic, but what about pads? Do you ever get into Novite or anything like that?
You know, a few years ago, we got into pads, and it seemed like, I'd say a few years ago, when I was a kid, that was one of my jobs. I got a quarter of a pair of pad-up shoes from my father. Every horse had pads, you know, and probably had pads because I was putting them on because I was getting a quarter pair.
Felt rim pads?
Felt rim pads, yep. And I still think a felt rim pad is a great pad. You just can't get good ones anymore, you know. A good felt rim pad is probably as good as anything, you know. And then we went through that period of, you know, and everybody said at that time, because we were using felt rim pads, and I heard a couple of trainers say it, that, well, you don't wear shoes without socks, do you? You know, and I think a lot of that was maybe trying to build a little bit of depth in the foot. Anymore, man, I've got a box of no vibes in my truck that I bought that's a 10-pair box, and I've got them 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s, and I probably haven't been there for 5 years and haven't used them all. You know, I'll slip them on a horse every once in a while, but I went to a thicker, wider shoe, you know. I use a Victory RX on most of my stuff, you know, and Kirkhart's got a super sound out that's a great shoe. St. Croix's got a shoe out that's an extra sound, and they are 22.5 by 10. is, you know, for the people that's using the off-track stuff. So that's a pretty substantial racing plate, you know. And we are able to drive 4.5 racing those horses. But I'm not, I keep everything in my truck because those aren't going to go on everything, and they're punch deeper. But I have seen my feet, since I went to a stronger, wider shoe, I have seen them get better, you know, which I think is great. You know, it was a little bit of a slow transition because, you know, at first they were only making them flush because they made it for the European market. But now we've got them in XT, we've got them in toe grab behind, so it's been fun. And they're also made, they don't have that, it's okay, they're made in right and left hinds, you know, so it's, you know, that's a big deal in the racetrack. It's supposed to be symmetrical, you know, but they're made in right and left hinds, they're easy to fit, you know, they're a nice shoe, they're a really nice shoe. I'll tell you what, I've had some people put them on some hunters too, and they really like that, you know, the hunter ponies and stuff. So where are we at here, guys? Behavioral problems. Every thoroughbred racehorse is crazy, right? Every one of them's crazy. I think that is a huge stereotype. You know, and the guys that go with me, the girls that go with me, they look and they're like, this is not what I thought at all. When I pull a horse out, my help gets under it, I'm grinding up my shoes, doing whatever I need to do. I walk back to that horse, and I'm telling you, 95% of the time, I throw left front, left hind, right hind on the ground, and I shoot them right there. They never move. You know, it is now, are they amped up? You know, there's some things that I do to get around them pretty easy. You know, and that is, these things are, for the most part, they're game ready. You know, and everybody sees them in the paddock. They're like, oh, they're crazy. You know, you're not going to stop a boxer and clip his toenails on the way to the ring. You know, it's just not going to happen. You know, and so I think everybody sees them on TV, or they see them, you know, in an environment that they're not used to. You know, but I do a lot of things to try to stay away from that too. Like I don't do horses on work days. First thing is, the reason that I don't do them on work days is they come out of the work sore, or something goes wrong, they're looking at you. You know. Second thing is they're amped up. You know. I try to do them the day after they work. If I do them the day after they work, a lot of times I got the wind knocked out of them. You know. So those are, you know, and the help is they know those horses like the back of their hand. And I know that off the track too, they've got a lot of help. It's really good help. But these guys, they breathe, they sleep, they eat these horses because it's the only way that they make a living. You know, the grooms are getting a percentage, the hot walkers are getting a percentage in a lot of, so they're trying to make sure that they take care of these horses. You know, I've had horses come out and, you know, they're turning around, get them there ready, and it's like, Pat, hang on, she needs a lip chain. You know, they put a lip chain on. They'll say, you know, she's been a little bit funny with her left hind, watch it. And I've had help that tell me, you know, start with the right hind, start with this, start with that. They know the horses trust them. You know, and they're trying to keep me from getting hurt. It's an investment, you know. And, so, any questions on that? Because I know that they're supposed to be the crazy ones.
Well, I always tell people that a racehorse is like a kid with a cup of sugar in church. I keep it still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're going to run around, they're going to jump.
Yep. And that is, you know, they are kids. For the most part, we're working on horses that are under 5 years old. They are kids, you know. And one other thing that we do is they are an investment. We have a veterinarian. I've never waited probably more than 5 or 10 minutes to tranquilize a horse. You know. There's a vet on track all the time. And it's not that, you know, sometimes you can't work through it, sometimes you can't, you know, well, we just need to make him stand. It's an investment. That thing's worth a lot of money, and I'm not buying him. I don't care if he's worth $5,000. I don't want to buy him. You know, so for them, they get a better shoeing job, a safer shoeing job. You know, he stands there. Everybody's happy, and why not? You know, you don't have to wait. It's right there. You know, and I've had several people, you know, like good horses going up to races. Yeah, I've shot them 20 times. They've all stood good. But today's not the day to find out if they're going to stand bad. They'll just train them. They'll just hit them with some train. And it's not anything, you know, some oral ace or something. It's not. Now those horses, and You know, and I don't want it to sound like I tranquilize a lot of horses either. I probably tranquilize 3 horses a month to shoot. You know, for the most part, they're there and they're pretty dang good. You know, for me, you know, I'm pretty lucky. I think I work for some pretty decent people, and they trust me, and they also trust me when these trained, nobody getting hurt. You know. The feed and the care these horses get, and I know when they come off the racetrack, they get a lot of, they do get a lot of care, and I'm not trying to deny that at all. If they go into top barns, they get care, but there's a transition period there, you know. And where I was saying before, I was taking horses off the racetrack that I had been shooting on the racetrack, and I thought they had pretty dang good feet, you know. And they moved over, and all of a sudden, they went to crap, you know. And I'm blaming on the guy who shot them before, and it was me, you know. But they're coming off this feed program that is unbelievable, and they're getting a lot of exercise. You know, whenever horses get a lot of exercise, they grow a lot of foot. You know, and they slow down when they come off of it. You know, they're on all kind of supplements. I mean, there is, you ought to see a racehorse feed tub. I mean, it looks like you couldn't eat it in 3 days. You know, I was working for a lady up at Turfway. We got stuck up there for a meet, and I went up there, and she was feeding in the evenings, and I swear to God, you wouldn't think a horse could eat that much. Her feed program in the afternoon, and she had nice horses, and they were fit, and they looked good. Some of them were almost a 5-gallon bucket full of feed. Like, I don't even know how a horse eats that much. You know, and I'm not saying all of them, but there was 2 or 3 in the barn, and it was almost a 5-gallon bucket full of feed. And I asked her, I said, Becky, I said, she said, Pat, they keep eating, and I keep giving to them. You know, because she's training them. You know, you're not going to take an athlete and start backing them off. You know, and the care they get, because the grooms have an invested interest in that horse, because he gets to make a little more. You know, most of the time, they're getting pretty dang good care. They are getting their feet picked twice a day. For the most part, the outfits that I work in, if I tell them they need something, they get it. You know, there is no question. And a lot of times I don't even go to the trainer. I just tell the groom, hey, he needs this or he needs that, or, you know, I've put stuff on horses as far as topical ornaments, you know, that just put it on there, you know, and it's worked out, you know, it works out well. So, and going back to the, you know, like new places, you know, these horses, they're a creature of habit, you know, they're a big creature of habit. You know, and if you take them and you put them in new places, they start getting wound up, you know. You take a horse off the racetrack and transition him into a jumper barn or whatever, they've never seen that horse. You know, they don't really know him. You know, so they're everybody's trying to get to know each other, you know. And a lot of times if you, on an off-the-track thoroughbred, they are a creature of habit. And if you think they're not a creature of habit, feed a barn at 4 o'clock every day and then feed them at 4:15. And tell me who's not telling you. You know, the whole barn's coming apart, you know. And at the racetrack, they're younger. They've been in training. A lot of these horses have been in training since they were a long yearling. You know, they go into training at 16, 18 months on the farms. You know, and then they come up, well, that feed regiment's there. That training regiment's there. They're used to getting trained in the morning. You know, they're used to getting fed at a certain time. Well, going along with that, they're used to me taking 25 to 35 minutes to shoot them. You know. And I know that my horses, I'll have some people that come in and help. And I've told them before, I said, hey, there's a time clock here. Because you can see them, they're starting to get, it's time for you to be done, you know. And I think with my off-the-track stuff, because when I transition them off the track, you know, the first thing I do is I try to use a fire and punch sheet. Because it is what it is, you know. And I'll burn them a little bit, you know, but I'm not going to set it in there and give it to them. You know, because they're not used to it. And I've got one horse that I just cannot keep his shoes on the racetrack, you know, and he's got steel shoes that are toe clipped, that are spoon heeled, that I burn on, and he never moves. He never, and I just sat there one day and I said, I'm just going to do it, you know, and I did it. And since then, we've been in good shape. You know, some of these horses will take it, some of them won't. You know, but start looking around at what you think they've seen and what they haven't seen. You know, they've never smelled fire before. you know, and even us ourselves, you know, we smell it, everybody starts looking for what's wrong. You know, they've never heard an anvil ring before. And most of these horses have never heard a grinder, you know. They've never seen, you know, for the most part, you know, a big truck back up with all the doors flying open on it, you know. There's a lot of things that they don't understand. And my suggestion probably would be, and I don't want to act like I'm a you know, guru on any of that. That's not what I do. But I have had some success transitioning those horses off the racetrack, using a finer punch shoe, you know, not hot fitting them the first time or lightly burning them so they just know you're there. And then, because it does take me longer when I'm doing them off the racetrack, you know, that I just show them in front and trim them behind, or I feel like if they need to be shot behind, you know, I'll come back a couple of days later to do them behind. Because I'm still giving them that 25, 35 minutes, you know, so they don't start getting amped up. They've never been in cross ties. You know, these horses have never, ever been in cross ties. And one, I didn't think about it. Shot a horse on the racetrack 3 weeks before, ended up in an event barn that I worked for. Wasn't thinking, because I'm at an event barn. Things change, my mindset changes, you know. I pull him out and stick him in the cross ties, I'm burning him on. You know, the owner comes up and she's, oh, yeah. And I didn't think about it. And it probably the horse was okay because I never thought about it, you know. But I went right on with him. Most horses aren't going to take that, you know.
We live, well, by Emerald now, and a lot of those horses get sold, you know, that didn't work out, maybe whatever, crazy. They get dispersed out all over, and I think that's part of why me personally and other people think they're crazy and everything else, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because that lady gets the horse and she's like, oh, I got this great horse, you know. It's like, oh, did it get raced? No, I don't think so, you know.
Yep.
And you're like, well, there's the number, you know, there's your numbers.
Yep.
And I guess you got bad foot, they just get a bad rap.
Well, and they also get a bad rap, and there's probably one thing that most people off the track don't think about is there is no free horse, you know. On the racetrack, no matter how you want to look at it, and I know we're the black sheep and the whole industry is a black sheep, you're not going to work 7 days a week at 4:30 in the morning for your entire life if you don't love horses a little bit, right? So in those barns that I work in, there's horse-loving male and females that are in there. And if they get to like a horse and he's a good horse, they place that horse. They know where he goes. You know, the ones that they just go, that's because 25 people didn't want him, you know. And exactly. I had a horse a few years ago that I really liked, you know, and I'll drag a off the track thoroughbred home for her every once in a while. Most of the time they get foot problems and I just feel bad for her, you know. But I told the trainer, I said, hey, you know, when this one comes off the track, I want him. And he laughed. And he walks in the office and he pulls out a list. And he puts her name down there. And she was 32nd on the list to get that horse. So, you know, that's, and he ended up at Buck Davidson, you know, so he went to a good home, you know, but everybody knew he was a good one. You know, he was second in the Derby, but he was a stud colt. You would have never known it. You know, just a big, good-looking, solid-made sucker. And at the end of his career, he retired sound. You know, but he didn't have any interest in the game anymore. You know, but there's a lot of horses that are that way, and there's a lot of horses too that people start thinking like with, you know, they come in, they see these shoes, these horses that are real long. You know, and they've got long toes, and they've got low heels, and they've got low nails, and they've got all this stuff going on. Well, these horses, as they're at the top track, you know, the top tracks, you know, your Churchills, your Santa Anitas, your Belmonts, you know, they're under really good care, you know. And as these horses start getting cheaper, what people don't understand a lot of times is they can't afford to keep it with the Chad Brown, they can't afford to keep it with the Dallas Stewart, they can't afford to keep it with the Bob Baffert. You know, because those guys are getting $125 a day, you know. So they move it to another outfit at a cheaper track. You know, well, cheaper purse money, you know, less experience, farriers, veterinarians. And I'm not saying that there's usually one or two guys at every racetrack that are pretty dang spanky, you know. Brian Smallwood, good friend of mine, He's at Mountaineer Park. This guy should be shoeing horses at the top level. But he's made his home there and he doesn't want to leave. You know, Brian's a really good guy. But as these horses move down, you know, they start getting to smaller purses, smaller tracks, and they end up at a track someplace, and they can't afford to shoe them, you know, every 4 weeks, you know. But as a race player, we've been taught to set this horse up to be shot for 4 weeks, you know. And now he's 6 weeks into his shoe and he's not running anymore, and they say, give him away. You can't give a horse away tomorrow. You know, so it takes another 2 or 3 weeks to give the horse away. Well, by the time
You go to auction now.
yeah, and then they're not going to shoe them there for sure, you know. And by the time they get them, these horses are 8, 9 weeks long with a racing plate on that was set up to be 4 weeks. Is it gonna? I think any job's going to look bad at 8, 9 weeks, you know.
Depends on a bunch of amateurs do. So.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of set those horses up like they do some race. I mean, Seattle Slough.
Yeah.
It was found 50 miles from my house, you know, almost emaciated starved to death.
Yeah.
You know, the lady took that horse and never fed it.
And I think a lot of that has changed in the racing industry too, with the you know, retirement programs that are out there, the rehoming programs that are out there. I think it's pretty cool, and that's become pretty big. I've got a lady that picks up all my shoes, and I'll pick them up for her, and I'll save them for her, and she sells off trinkets and does different things with them, and she gives 10% back to the federal retirement community, you know. And so, you know, there's a lot of that goes on. There's a lot of fundraisers now, you know, there's a lot of that. But even there, they can't afford to shoe them every 4 weeks because they're trying to set a horse up and give it away, you know. You know. Techniques. Get smaller. You look at me and you're probably trying to figure out how I get smaller. Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about. With a thoroughbred racehorse, they're a flight animal. You know, and when you go in there and you're doing them the first time, I'm not talking about, you know, trying to crawl in the barn, but be quiet. You know, get small. Don't go in there all waving your arms, and which is, you know, basically any horse. You know, but for them, they're really looking to go someplace. You know, and I think it's pretty important, you know, to be, and they'll transition out of it. You know, 6 months into it, they'll come out of it, and they'll be fine. You know, and then everybody says, well, you know, we rebroke them and we did all these things, and we just got used to it. You know, not saying that some work doesn't need to go in. Left front. Everything we do on these racehorses starts with the left front. Everything we do starts with the left front. Rider gets up on the left side. When they're putting on bandages, for the most part, they go to the left front because of the way they tie them to the wall. You know, they go to the left front. They are most comfortable with the left front. Your grooms pick everything from the left side. You know, so as you're working on these horses, keep that in mind. You know, everything we do is from the left front, and they are really comfortable with the left front. And most of the time, until they get transitioned in, until you get used to working on them, they get used to you, go to the left hind. You know, just stay on that side and work your way around.
I saved it to the last.
What's that?
I saved it to the last, so they run out of time.
Yeah. It's, you know, but that is, you know, that's some things maybe people don't think about, you know, just, that'll help out. I've seen horses that just, they calm down right off the bat when you go to their natural side. You know, walk to their shoulder, you know, and just go to work, you know. Time under the horse, we went over that. You know, most guys are 25 to 35 minutes. And that is, you know, try to keep that pretty consistent. Stretch it out, and then, you know, after everybody gets to know everybody, you're good. Equipment and sounds. I've had a lot of people get in the truck and they come in with a shoeing box that's, I don't know, about this tall, you know, and it's got a radio on it, and it's got stuff hanging off of it, and it's got buffers hanging off of it, and it's got, you know, it's got an electrical device where you can sit on it and ride it around. And they, you know, they've never seen one. All of the platers, or most of the platers, I'm not going to say all of the platers, but most of the platers use a box that is about 16 inches tall and about 12 inches wide. And everything goes in and out of the bottom of, my dad did a video, it's called, you know, it's just about staying in the box. You know, everything is done in the bottom of the box and out of the bottom of the box. Like, you don't had your hands out here. Everything with a racehorse is done underneath the bottom, so a lot of times they don't see anything moving. You know, they don't see anything flailing. Everything goes in and out of the bottom, and what he's talking about, box, is right here. You know, you try to stay inside that box. So they've never seen all the movement outside of it, you know, and they've never seen that box rattling, pulling it in there. That's a tip, you know, if, and I've seen that just help some people out. I've got a friend of mine, he doesn't have a player box, but he shoots a lot of off-the-track thoroughbreds, and I've been trying to figure out why he doesn't get a smaller box just to shoot them. Use a 5-gallon bucket. But he shoots 50 of them, you know. And they will transition into it. They will get used to it, you know. But it's just a tip for the, you know, the first time going off the racetrack, you know, or time or two, you know. Picture walking over for the Derby here. This guy here is probably one of, right there, Dallas Stewart. Worked for him a long time. He's a very dear friend of mine. That guy never questions anything I do. Anything. I had a horse in glue-ons that I was shoeing at his barn, and you know, this goes back to like the trainers tell you to do everything. And they tell you, because that's a big stereotype, they tell you what to do. There's 4 blacksmiths standing there watching me shoe this horse, right? I come up and Dallas walks up and he says, "What's going on, brother?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing this horse and I'm down on one knee and I'm gluing him on." And he says, "Who is this?" You know, and I told him. He said, "When did we put him in glue-ons?" 3, 4, 5 months ago. He says, "Okay." He turns around and walks off. You know, and the other guys they're like, "He didn't know he was." I said, "No, he knows that I'm going to try to do whatever's right." You know, and when people untie your hands, I don't care where you're working, when they untie your hands and they trust you, you get better right then. Right then. But my wife wanted me to tell this at the first of it. And I probably didn't tell it at the first of it because I'm not real sure I could get through it without shedding a tear or two. Pressure. Pressure is a huge deal on the racetrack. There is 15 horseshoers that drive by that barn every single morning, and they want your work, you know. And they'll stop by and talk to your trainer, you know. Doesn't bother me, you know. I had a guy stop by and tell Dallas Stewart that he would shoe a horse for $100 less than what I shoe a horse for. And every time that he shot a horse, he'd stick $100 in his pocket. You know, he said, "I don't need a horseshoe that bad." And which I thought was great, you know. I've been with that guy for 20 years, 22 years probably. My dad started working for him, worked for him about 6 months. I went to work for Dallas. That particular horse that's walking over, you run across those horses every once in a while that makes you better instantly. Changes your life. That's one of them. I'm going to try to get through this. That horse, when he was a yearling, he got hung up in a fence. Ripped off both of his heels, right? He's got bad scars. Obviously, we're walking over for the Derby. You know, he's a good one. Didn't have a quarter crack in the Derby. We were milking him along, trying to pay attention to him. You know, they looked like they were going to open. We do some things to him, and you know, the whole time we're milking this sucker along, and he just keeps running. You know, and come up in the fall after the Derby, he shipped to New York, or he was shipping to New York, and 5 days before the race, he blows a quarter crack. Finally opens up on us. You know, it's 5 days before the race. We put a patch on him. He goes up there and wins $400,000. You know, comes back. That's not what made me better. Yeah. I'm underneath another horse for Dallas. There's a Spanish lady that walks up to me, and she is jabbering as fast as she can jabber. And all I could get out of it was gracias, you know. And she's going and she's going, and I don't know what she's saying. I don't have a clue what she's saying, you know. And I walk off, or she walks off. I asked the guy who was holding the horse, he's a Spanish guy, a good friend of mine. I said, "What was she saying?" He said, "She was thanking you." I said, "I got that." You know. He says, "If that horse didn't win that race, her family, her kids, were going back to Mexico." That's pressure. That's pressure. And at that moment, I realized this whole deal was a lot bigger than me. You know, and at that moment, that horse made me better. Yeah. So, and that one's probably one I hold pretty close to my heart. I've told 4 people that story. Now I've told a bunch. But anyway, I do. I absolutely love this game. We'll lay it out for this game. You know. But, and if you don't have passion and you don't have love for what you're doing, go hang steel. There's a place for you. You know. And don't get in my truck. Think we're done, guys?